You let me down. I am so disappointed my cartoon avatar is crossing his arms. Because I read Boyfriends, the webtoon webcomic by Refrain Bro, and instead of a total snarkfest, you know what? It was fine. I read it and went about my life. But everyone's reacting like this webcomic committed pronouns at Starfield. Just what is the issue here? That it's a little too corny? It's a little too cute? Ooh, tough guy can't handle seeing the pastel yaoi boys hanging out. Grow up, loser. This comic gives you exactly what you would expect. You look at the cute cover art, you see the title, and it delivers exactly what it promises and keeps chugging along for its 200 chapter runtime. And yeah, I admit, I did have to suppress my gag reflex when I first dove in, but once I got over the corny meme speak, I could take this in as the popcorn entertainment that it's meant to be. So as I set off to roast and review this, I came to the startling realization. Boyfriends is the Garfield of webtoons. And I'll explain more on that later because I do want to kick things off with what I enjoyed about this webcomic. Part 1. What was cool? I could feel myself warming up to this comic the longer I read it and grew more familiar with its worldview. My favorite arc was the one where the main four recreate the Little Mermaid, but this time they gave it a polyamorous twist. This was so creative and fun. If Boyfriends ever returns from hiatus, it'd be so cool if they do a side story like this every season. There's a lot of stories that could be greatly improved with a polyever after ending, and Boyfriends is in a unique position to provide us with that fan service. The characters are meant to be archetypes you could project onto, so why not plug them into more classic stories? My second favorite arc. When the goth does a streamathon and he gets his first tattoo. It's impressive how this was able to balance both being incredibly sincere and being so fun with its wish fulfillment indulgence. Rainbow's writing does make noticeable improvements in Season 2. I really did go in wanting to trash on this completely, because it's so fun being a little hater. But what can I say? These soft boys use their power of love to win me over. I also love the art because it takes the cuteness up to an 11, and it's no wonder this webcomic was formally knighted as a Webtoons original. These are the kind of striking, memorable characters that make for great merchandising. Despite all the shit I'm about to talk, I would be down for buying some Boyfriends merch. It looks gorgeous. And since everyone at the pub got used to my Ahegao hoodie, I have been in the market for finding some hot new anime merch that'll ignite a bar fight. So what's especially impressive is the way these characters are able to morph between super cute chibis and stunningly gorgeous. But this rarely stood out as the gag panel or the fan service panel, and that works as a testament to this comic's visual design. When everything looks so soothing and pleasant, it's harder to pick up on when something's a shortcut. And I never felt like this comic was wasting my time. Okay, this is my biggest issue with Webtoons specifically. Too many get a little too cozy with the infinite canvas. So for every Webtoon that uses the infinite canvas in bold, unique ways, we've got 9 reincarnated as the Archduke Villainous' daughter who in an Otome game with max HP. And half the thing is a panning shot of a 3D Clip Studio castle. And I hope you like looking at that Clip Studio model because you won't find it in every other Webtoon. I know that's just Sturgeon's Law, but here's what's interesting about Boyfriends. It's that it isn't trying to do anything insane with its infinite canvas, but it also avoids all of the worst shortcuts exclusive to Webtoons. Boyfriends knew exactly how to pace their pages. And of all of these sequential visual arts, I know the least about Webtoons, but I could sense Boyfriends was doing something very right. Now for some things I was mixed on. Part 2. I have some notes. Okay, I'll just say it. This needed to be hornier. You get a group of dudes together, regardless of sexuality, they're gonna bang. So you're telling me there's a group of 4 men living together and they're able to do anything other than violently and exuberantly plow each other into next week? Hell, you find a straight guy serving a 2-week slap on the wrist prison sentence because he didn't pay a parking ticket, and he's gonna smash more than the Boyfriends. One of the comic critiques of Boyfriends is that it stereotypes the gays. What? Like what? How? If anything, this pretty deliberately avoids the biggest and most negative stereotype about gays and polyamorous. This story is a good example of the friendship is magic solution. Lauren Faust said that on many cartoons she worked on, she would fight to have more than one female character, so the lone girl wouldn't stand out as the token chick of the group. And in Friendship is Magic, all of the main characters are girls, so no single character has the load-bearing responsibility of being the chick, so they're free to express themselves however they want. When you have multiple female characters, it tells the audience that there's different ways of being a girl. And you can argue Boyfriends is kind of doing the same thing, so I don't see what's the issue here. This reeks of people who didn't like this comic to begin with, nitpicking to find something to be mad at. And oh boy, are there a lot of nitpicks. You go on the fandom wiki and there's so much anger, like what happened here? Oh, okay, so you successfully convinced everyone that you're a totally cool big kid who's so over Barney the dinosaur and now you need to move on to your next hatetum? Sure, there's a lot of subplots and moments that felt a little too fruity for my taste. Things like, oh, my dream date is to go shopping with a cute guy. And oh, I wish I could cling to a big, strong guy's bicep. There's also a lot of futzing around over throwing parties and needing to decorate for holidays that, to be perfectly clear, I found incredibly annoying. But if you hang out with any gay guy who owns multiple pairs of short shorts, this type of feminine behavior is pretty par for the course. So even in those moments, I just shrugged with, well, I guess I'm not flamboyant enough to get it. But it never felt like the hate crime everyone's making it out to be, so for fuck's sake, calm down. Part 3. I guess this author is controversial, but I think you're all just a bunch of dweebs. So you look up Boyfriend's author and it'll autocomplete to controversial. I guess everyone on Twitter's taken a freelancing gig as one of Santa's elves and they've been tasked with making a naughty list. But I couldn't find anything actually wrong with the guy. I guess this artist is controversial because he tweeted something racist when he was 13. Hey man, if you gotta dig back to when someone was 13, that's the least racist person on the planet. I can't go 10 minutes without saying something racist. There's also the whole issue of him drawing BTS slash, and I kinda don't care. I'm more okay with real person slash than the average taper, so here's how I see it. Did BTS personally say to knock that shit off? No? Okay. Maybe there's bigger issues in the K-pop industry we can get mad about. I know BTS has enough dollar bills to dry their teary eyes if they ever find out some dork wrote a fanfic about them. Getting mad about real person slash has to be the worst way to participate in K-pop fandom. Go learn one of their silly dances. I promise that is way more fun. This whole cancellation is so fucking stupid. We get a queer artist eking into the mainstream with a work that's very openly queer, and there's an angry mob waiting to drag him. Like, okay, man, I guess the only queer media we'll get for the next 100 years is Disney sneaking in a gay character in the background with a throwaway line that can be edited out for a release in China. That's all we fucking deserve, isn't it? Anyway, back to Boyfriends. Part 4. What I hated. The biggest thing that actually, legitimately, truly annoyed me about this comic was the character profiles. I had trouble believing that these characters could exist. Everything felt like an awkward mishmash of surface level cool points that had zero footing in reality. Like, Jock carries a football because he's the Jock. And I want to know why. Wouldn't a hacky sack be a better item to carry around if you're into starting impromptu games of sports ball on the college campus? Or, hell, maybe instead of football, maybe a grip strength trainer would be a little more useful? Something that jocks actually use in the real world and carry around? If this had any footing in reality, we'd hear Jock's thoughts on Planet Fitness's monthly pizza night. Doesn't matter if he doesn't go there, any person who treats their gym membership seriously has heard of this gimmick, and no one has a neutral opinion on it. And okay, what's up with pointing out he has so many TikTok followers? We never actually see him using the clock app, so this feels like an afterthought. This profile only makes sense if you imagine it's being read by some dweeb, live narrating their Build-A-Bear session as they tearfully assemble their dream man on Shinden Maker. Meh. My perfect jock boyfriend, he's got big muscles, and he plays for the football team, and he's a good boy, he was super good at flirting, and he's got lots of TikTok followers, and he carries a football. Or, okay, how about the nerd, who, by the way, eventually has an egg crack subplot, and in the most recent arc is going by she/her pronouns, thus proving there is no boys club on the planet safe from some dame muscling her way in. Even here, in the all-male gay polycule, there's still some broad Title IXing her way through and chucking the no girls allowed treehouse sign in the trash. Pronouns aside, I can't stand this dope. She's got cotton candy hair, and dresses super cute, and she loves anime, and K-pop, and vintage gaming. Fucking barf. There's something about this that just feels so unbelievable. Like, okay, wait, let me clarify. I can believe an anime nerd would be into K-pop. I could believe you'd also be into vintage gaming. Nothing there seems contradictory. It's just so damn hollow. It's once again just listing off traits the author thinks is cool. I want to know why someone who's double majoring in astronomy and computer science specifically gets out of magical girl anime and K-pop. She seems to be someone who lives for the glitter and glamour and the fun of kawaii, and that's fine. That's heckin' valid. But what exactly drew you to being a comp-sci major instead of something with a little more sparkle and softness? If she was majoring in interior design, fashion, even marketing, this would fit her vibe better and I'd have no issue with her character profile. But this is the nerd, so she's gotta have the nerd major. And other than occasionally strutting around in a NASA t-shirt, I don't see an interest in astronomy ever come up. So if I ever find this dork, I am violently Kamehamehaing her into the wall and asking her point blank, what do you think of Elon Musk, you fake gamer girl? And oh, computer science? That's rich! Do you think computer science is lounging around in stripy socks and shopping for rainbow LED keyboards? Fuck you! Fuck you! I have less of a problem with the prep, and I think the reason is this character is someone who the author doesn't project onto and doesn't want to date. So he can just exist as the prep archetype without devolving into a funhouse mirror distortion or layering shit on top of shit in a desperate attempt to seem cool. He's also more immediately flawed from the get-go. He is kind of an asshole, and that's way more interesting than being the perfectest little metaphor. Goth is the author's self-insert wish fulfillment, and he's just fine. I don't care. I think because the nerd was able to absorb all of the author's cutesy hobbies and shout to the audience, look at all the cool stuff I like. Goth is able to exist as the goth one. I'm not even particularly annoyed that these characters are playing to their archetypes. I didn't even care that they're never addressed directly by name. I actually thought that was a pretty creative little touch. All of these archetypes are microscopically tuned to the taste of terminally online fandom culture. So you're not going to get a jock you would find in a movie or a sitcom. Instead, you're going to get the average AO3 user's idea of a jock. And that's why the series has drawn so much love and so much vitriol. Because you're either on board with these nebulous concepts of a human or you find it irrevocably cringe. By the time the ladies division rolls around and we're introduced to the all-girls polycule running adjacent to the boyfriends, I was broken into accepting this worldview. The prep girl is a law major and a streamer, but she's not doing LawTube or covering court cases. She's just playing video games and doing basic Twitch shit. Really, she has no interest in filling that niche and making Nick Rekieta levels of money. All right, man, sure, whatever you say. I'm guessing she's a law major because she's orderly and particular. I never see a strong sense of justice or an interest in the judicial system ever come up. I think she was made a law major because this reinforces that she's a persnickety prep. And in the language of undercooked fanfic AUs, that reasoning checks out. I want to bring up this panel specifically. And if you're audio only, I'll do my best to explain it. On the left side are the boyfriends sitting at a table, and they have a bunch of stinky stink lines and they're labeled as disaster gays. The girlfriends are on the right side, sitting at a different table, looking full of pep and pizzazz, and they're labeled as distinguished gays. And this panel comes to us after the chapter lubes us up by sharing all of the over-the-top achievements held by the girlfriends. But I don't get it. Really. First of all, the boyfriends seem to be doing just fine for the typical college students that they are. Oh, so just because the girlfriends are unreasonably successful, you're all a disaster now? And I could go on a whole boomer rant about the whole disaster gaze being worn as a badge of honor, but I will stop myself there. This panel does a great job of summing up a big part of this comic's appeal. There's no actual struggle or hardship. It's not challenging, but it's not meant to be challenging. This is an escapist fantasy. And sure, in season 2, we get a tad more character development, but it never escalates to anything too emotionally difficult or melodramatic. But it's not supposed to. This exists so you can indulge in the fantasy of hanging out with the boyfriends. And the more I thought about what Boyfriends is providing the consumer, the more it felt like a modern-day Garfield. Part 5. Boyfriends as Garfield. Here's why. Please leave all of your Garfield fandom, creepypastas, and gothfields at the door. I'm thinking of the historical, pre-internet 80s and 90s Garfield of yore that spawned Garfield Mania. It's a comic that reliably delivers what it promises, with a robust merchandising department to fill your life with this adorable character. Just look at the little guy. He's so stinking cute. You look at that plushie long enough, you'll forget that his actual comic will never make you laugh as hard as The Far Side. And sometimes you don't want to go for huge belly laughs or feel particularly challenged. You want Garfield to gently lull you into feeling comfortable. Some of the most memorable individual Garfield arcs include Garfield Alone and the one where John and Liz officially become a couple. And as cool as those are, they stand out because they exist in such an easygoing comic. You could say the same about any of Boyfriend's comics that dare to dig a little bit deeper. Boyfriends also provides you a pleasant, relaxed experience, and when they interject with something nuanced, it stands out. But they're always very careful to not go too hard and scare off the fan base. What's truly extraordinary about Boyfriends is that it achieved a similar marketable appeal almost by accident. Jim Davis studied both art and business in college and intentionally designed Garfield with marketability in mind. However, the same can't be said for Boyfriends. From what I can tell, it's a passion project that started independently and was later scooped up by Webtoon's original. And Boyfriend's unique online origin gives some clues for why it's so hated, but this hatred feels both disproportionate and misdirected. So I want to offer 3 theories why this became the most hated webcomic. Theory A: justifying the outrage. Some people can't just say something's cringe, they have to find a deeper reason to justify their hatred. Because if they're picking on boyfriends for being dorky, that means they're a bully, and they can't be that. This is Twitter's most noblest little gender studies major. They wouldn't do something so crass. Why? They don't hate boyfriends because it's cringe. They hate it because it, fetishizes the gay poly experience. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Let's go with that. The boyfriends do everything conventionally correct when it comes to showing a healthy polyamorous relationship, so if even they don't meet your standard, I don't think anyone will. Theory B: fandom as identity. I get the sense that a lot of the anger comes from people who are in its target demographic, that is, nerds who are entrenched in fandom or online queer spaces, but this particular group doesn't vibe with Boyfriend's ethos. With Boyfriends being such a huge hit, they're afraid it will misrepresent themselves to the perceived other. It's the same way a lot of furries will get paranoid that everyone thinks that the furry fandom is all about questionable activities in costumes. And there's a very particular, incredibly annoying, self-conscious safe fur that becomes engulfed and swearing up and down that they just think foxes are neat. The furry fandom isn't about the sex. Stop saying it's about the sex. Or those guys who have a persona, take furry commissions, but they need to remind you that they don't identify as a furry. Those guys are just too yucky. I guess no one's told them that normies think that anything furry is degenerate, so the need for mainstream approval is a losing battle. So in come the boyfriends, marching in as the cutest darn thing imaginable. And if someone's got that killer combo of caring a whole lot about Twitter fandom and having paper-thin skin, the mere presence of these pastel soft boys will make them break into a cold sweat. It reeks of that consumer culture need to have your fandom signal to the world who you are and what you're about. A lot of this hatred has to come from people who are incredibly self-conscious about how they come off to strangers. Boyfriends would have been something they could vote with their dollar and use as an identity signifier. But there's something about it that's just slightly off. And that dissonance has to account for some of the anger. Theory C: I could do that. It's easy to snark at Garfield and roll your eyes because it's so clearly a marketing ploy. But Garfield is in the past. Even if you dismiss it as kind of corny or you feel like, I could do that, Jim Davis was in the right time and the right place to get his newspaper comic deal. The world of newspaper comics is dying, but Webtoons isn't. And when you compare online comic publishing with old school newspaper publishing, it's way less about timing and having the right connections. When you consider the vast number of indie works published on Canvas, compared to the small portion that graduate to originals, and the even smaller fraction that eventually secure a book deal, it creates a more compelling Cinderella story. It also makes it easier to believe that any book on the shelf has reached a certain level of quality. And the bigger frustration will start to boil under the surface. This isn't the old days of comics, where you had to physically go to the Daily Bugle and have an editor look over your portfolio. Webtoons has a button right there inviting you to publish with them. So how'd this Uwu Softboy comic get on the shelf, and your idea didn't? Who should we get mad at? Webtoons editors for approving this, the audience for lapping this up, or the author for providing the sludge? Well, you can't get mad at yourself for not making your killer idea to compete with boyfriends. That would be unreasonable. So the most common, no-duh comeback to, I could have done that, is, well, why didn't you? Things like Garfield, Boyfriend, and Rothko are revolutionary because they were the first ones to do it. And you could not have made Boyfriends. Anyone with a business degree would never have made Boyfriends. This is a rare example of something being incredibly insane, yet easily accessible. Part 6. Conclusion. Even if you tidied up the meme speak, this is a story that, at its heart, could only be birthed from terminally online fandom culture, and yet, the overall experience is closer to a relaxed newspaper comic. In most webcomics born from wanting to show off OCs, authors often feel it's vital that the reader knows every inch of their backstory. Instead, Boyfriends is content to shrug with, this one's the goth, and leave it at that. There's something so simple and straightforward about its delivery that it feels like it's not of this era, and yet, it's the most current year thing you could read. Let's take a closer look at the infamous Owo Choco strip. This is the strip that was adapted into a short cartoon and memed into oblivion thanks to the dialogue being so unbelievably doofy. The prep is upset because he just wants a boyfriend. Is that so hard? And as he complains, the goth fulfills his every desire, so that silly goose doesn't realize his dream man's been there for him the whole time. I know the punchline is obvious, but that's my point. No one who watched that cartoon or read the original comic strip was confused about what was going on. And anyone with that classic cartooning muscle isn't making a polyamorous boys love manga. That's why Boyfriends is so special. So if Garfield wants to stay hip with the kids, him and Arlene better open up their relationship. I floated the subject to Nirmal and Odie, and I know they'd be game.